We are going to start up a new chapter, new topic, and it's going to be on percents. This is a chapter that I like to teach a lot. It's a fun chapter, I think. Students usually get into it because it has a lot of real life applications. Now, at the very beginning, the first couple of lessons, not so much, but once we start to talk about money, things involved with money, there is a lot that we can apply to real world situations. But today we're just going to focus on finding the percent of a number. If it says like find 50% of 10, we're going to be able to do that for any percent and for any number. So first of all, a few things to get down is whenever we are finding the percent of a number, we can use a fraction or a decimal. It doesn't matter which one you use, but you are able to use either of those to figure out what the percent is. I would suggest sometimes use a fraction, sometimes use a decimal, and just really look at the number and the percent that you've got to use, and that's going to tell you which one is easier to use. If you are using a fraction, this slide tells you what to do. You want to write the percent over 100, and if you are able to simplify it, you simplify it, and then you're going to multiply that fraction by the number that's given to you. If you need to simplify after you multiply those two numbers together, then you do that. If we've got to find 30%, we would do 30 over 100 times whatever number we're talking about, and then we simplify after we've done that. And so that's if we want to use a fraction. Like I said, sometimes it would make sense to use a fraction. If we have like 50%, 50 over 100, that's a half, one half. That might be a little easier to multiply. The other way that you can find the percent of a number is by writing that percent as a decimal. And this one we'll probably use more often than not. This always works as well. To write the percent as a decimal, you remove the percent sign and you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. And once you've done that, you multiply that decimal by the number that's given. Probably one that's a little easier to work with in many cases. Sometimes fractions would be easier. So for example, if we're talking about 37%, we're going to take away the percent sign. And right now, the decimal point is after the 7, 37.0. And so what we would do is move the decimal point 2 spots to the left, and it's going to be 0.37. Then we would do 0.37 times whatever number we're talking about. So we want to go from 37% to a decimal. That's what we would do. Okay, so that's writing as a decimal. One last thing before we get into some of the questions that we've got to worry about. If the percent is greater than 100, if the percent is greater than 100, for example, we're talking about 125%. If you use a fraction, we would still write it over 100. So 125 over 100. If we are using a decimal, once again, it's still the same steps. We move the decimal point 2 spots to the left to get 1.25. So if the percent is greater than 100%, your fraction or your decimal is going to be bigger than 1. And then you would multiply that number, that fraction, that decimal by the number that's given to you. Okay, so that is using whichever method we want to use to find the percent of a number. One last thing that I want to point out, and that is if we had 70%, 70% would be 0.70, right? 0.70. 7%, we're going to move our decimal point 2 times to the left. 1, 2. And so it's not going to be 0.7, it's going to be 0.07. And so that is very important. If your number is smaller than 10%, like 8%, 9%, 3%, there needs to be a 0 in between that number and the decimal point. One of the biggest mistakes that I see is students will write 7% as 0.7. That's 70%. Okay. And so make sure if it's less than 10%, you still move the decimal point 2 times to the left, which is much like the first example that we have here. Find 5% of 300. So I'm going to use a decimal for this first one, and we'll use some fractions here later on, and then you can decide which method you would rather use for yourself. But 5%, I would use a decimal, and I'm going to write 5% first as a decimal. So remember, we moved the decimal point 2 times to the left. So it's right after the 5 right now. Move it over 2 times to the left. It's going to become not 0.5, but 0.05. So make sure you write that correctly. Once we have changed our percent to a decimal, then we just multiply 300 times 0.05. Remember, with decimals, when we multiply normally. So multiply our 5 times 0, and then times 3. And then just going to be a bunch of zeros after that. So we get 1500, and then don't forget to move your decimal point 2 times to the left to make it 15.00, or just 15. So 5% of 300 is 15. Okay, for our second one, 25% of 180, I will use a fraction for this just so you can see the two different methods. So 25%, if I want to write that as a fraction, it would be 25 over 100 because every percent is out of 100. So 25 over 100, I would simplify that and make that 1/4. So 25 over 100, make that 1/4. Then I'm going to take and multiply 180 over 1 times that fraction times 1/4. So that's going to get me 180 over 4. And then I'll simplify 180 over 4. If I divide both of those by 2, I get 90 over 2. Divide that by 2 one more time, and that simplifies to 45 over 1, or just 45. So 25% of 180 would be 45. Okay, so let's look at a couple others. We got 55% of 160. 55% of 160. So here I would do 55% as a decimal. Make that 0.55, 0.55, and then multiply 160 by that 0.55. So 160 times 0.55, and multiply just like normal. So 30 there, get 8 there, add a 0. Don't forget to add your 0 the second time. Do the same thing here. I get 8800. Move your decimal point 2 times to the left. So 55% of 160 would be, I'm sorry, not 80, but 88. Okay, so 88 is 55% of 160. And then if you write 75% of 280, I'll do 75% as a fraction just to give you both looks. 75 over 100, and that simplifies to 3/4. So I do 280 times 3/4. 280 over 1 times 3 over 4. So 280 times 3 is going to be 840 over 4, 1 times 4. And then I will simplify 840 over 4, I could divide them both by 2 to get me 420 over 2. And then if I divide that by 2 one more time, I get 210 over 1, or just 210. So 210 is 75% of 280. So that's giving you both methods, using a fraction or using a decimal. All right, so I'll have you all do the last two on your own. And one thing to note is notice that these are both greater than 100%. So you might need to change. You still do the same thing. You move the decimal point 2 times to the left. You write the fraction over 100, and then you multiply by that number. But you all go ahead and find 150% of 28, 220% of 35. All right. So if you made 150% into a fraction, you would change that to 150 over 100. If I divide both of those by 50, I get 3 over 2. Or you could write 150% as a decimal. You move the decimal point over 2 times to the left, and that would be 1.50 or just 1.5. So either way that you write that, I would do 3 over 2 times 28 over 1, or I would do 28 times 1.5, and I should get 42 as my answer. 42 as my answer. So 42 is 150% of 28. Same thing for our next one. If you write 220%, choose to write it as a fraction. This might be a little bit tougher just because 220% doesn't simplify great with 100, but you can divide both of those by 10 and you get 20, I'm sorry, yeah, 220 over 100. You get 22 over 10. And you can simplify that one more time and get you 11 over 5. So you do 11 over 5 times 35 over 1. Or I could write 220% as a decimal, and that would be 2.20 or 2.2. So I would do 35 times 2.2. And whenever you multiply those out, either way you choose to do that, you should get 77. 77 is 220% of 35. If you think about this really quick, 200% of something is doubling it. I'm multiplying that number by 2. So 200% of 35 would be 35 times 2, double 35, which is 70. And then that's going to be even more than 200%. So 77, it does make sense. It's a bit bigger than 35. That's because I'm more than doubling that 35. Okay. So last thing, we'll look at a couple of word problems that talk about finding the percent of a number. So here, Mr. Studemak earned a 4% commission on the sale of a hot tub that cost $3,755. How much money did he earn? So one thing a word that you might not be familiar with yet, you're going to see it a lot when talking about percents, especially some of the questions we do this year, and that is the word commission. So if you need to get this down, I would suggest writing down what the word commission means. That means that you are getting that percent of whatever you sell. So you get that percent, and I'll put in parentheses, we're talking about money, of whatever you sell. So, for example, some jobs that have commission attached to them, a car salesman. If somebody is selling cars, they get a commission. They get maybe 5% of whatever they sell that car for. And so every car they sell, if they sell it for, $10,000, they make 5% of $10,000. If you're selling houses, the way that realtors make their money is they make their money off of commission. So if you buy a house for $200,000, a percent of that money that you paid for that house is going to go to the realtor, and that's how they make their money. Something like sometimes people who sell jewelry get a commission if they sell a lot of things. They get commission based off that. So any person that sells a lot of things, they make a commission. And if they make a commission, that means they're getting that percent of the money of whatever they sell. So in this case, Mr. Sudamak, he gets 4% of every hot tub that he sells. Now, a lot of times people that get paid on commission, they also make a base salary. So they're going to make, this much money every year, plus on top of that, the percent commission that they get. And so that's what commission means. So in other words, what we're trying to do, if we want to find out how much he earns, we've got to find 4% of what he sold the hot tub for, which is 3,755. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to change 4% into a decimal, and 4% into a decimal. Remember, you got to move the decimal point 2 times to the left. So that's going to make it 0.04 because it's less than 10%. There should be a 0 before we put the 4 there. So we're going to do 3,755 times 0.04 and multiply that out. All right, and then multiply the 0, but it's going to be a bunch of zeros on that second line. And so we're going to get 15020. But don't forget to move your decimal point 2 times to the left. And so it's going to end up being $150.20. So if he sells a hot tub on 4% commission for $3,755, he's going to make $150.20 of commission from that sale. Okay, so there's one more question. I want you all to do that on your own. Enter that question, find the percent of that number, and then we'll look at it here in a second. Okay, so what you've got to do is you've got to find 30% of the 800 people to find out how many people speak Spanish, you expect to speak Spanish. So 30%, you can write that as either 0.3 or 0.30 or 30 over 100, which is 3 over 10. Okay, and so you're going to take either 0.30, 0.3, or 3/10, multiply that by 800, and you should end up with 240 people. 30% of 800 would be 240. Okay, so that is finding the percent of a number. We're going to stop right there. We're going to continue on this week looking at some different things, but that's kind of the base of how to find the percent of a number. So you all can go ahead and work on the practice problems.